Welcome to the Fearful Fright series, where we will be reading with our favorite green ghoul, Grimmer. Now sit back and enjoy this twisted tale. Today our story is called The Queen's Mouth. Florence Delta had learned long ago that the most dangerous places in the world were never marked clearly on maps. They existed in the margins, half-erased footnotes in ancient texts, whispered warnings passed down by villagers who had learned not to ask questions. When Florence stood at the edge of the Argolid Hills in southern Greece, staring at a narrow cleft in the rock half hidden by dead vines and loose stones, she knew this cave was one of those places. Her team was excited. That worried her. "Hard to believe no one's excavated this," said Marcos, their local guide, grinning as he adjusted his helmet light. "Could be pre-Mycenaean." Florence didn't answer. The air around the cave felt colder than the morning should allow, as if the opening were breathing out something old and sour. She had studied Greek mythology since graduate school, real mythology, not the polished heroic versions. The older stories spoke of curses, gods who punished curiosity, monsters that were not born evil but made so. This cave matched too many descriptions. Still, she stepped forward. Archaeologists always do. The cave swallowed sound almost immediately. Florence felt it in her ears, the way the echoes died too quickly, like something was absorbing them. Their headlamps cut narrow tunnels through the darkness, revealing jagged limestone walls streaked with mineral deposits that glistened like wet skin. They passed the first carvings 10 minutes in. Greek letters, archaic and uneven, gouged deep into the stone. Not ceremonial. Panicked. Florence traced one with her glove, translating under her breath. "Turn back," she sees. "Do not bring light." "Cheery," someone muttered behind her. Florence frowned. Ancient warnings were rarely metaphorical. People didn't carve into rock in terror unless something had driven them to it. They moved deeper. The cave widened, then narrowed again, forcing them into single file. The temperature dropped steadily. Florence noticed something else too: smell. Not rot. Not animals. Metallic. Like old blood and wet stone. That was when they found the first statue. It stood half-buried near a wall, a man in ancient armor, shield raised, mouth open in a scream that would never finish. Florence crouched beside it, heart hammering. The detail was impossible. Veins stood out beneath stone skin. Fingernails cracked and chipped as if they'd tried to claw their way free. "This isn't sculpture," Florence whispered. Marcos laughed uneasily. "You think someone carved?" She touched the statue's cheek. "Cold. Too cold." "No," she said. "I think this was a man." Silence followed her words. They found more as they went on. Dozens. Then hundreds. Warriors. Farmers. Women clutching children. All frozen mid-movement, expressions twisted in pure, unfiltered terror. Some looked as though they'd tried to shield their eyes. Others stared straight ahead. Florence felt her pulse in her throat. This wasn't a burial site. This was a slaughterhouse. The sound came suddenly. A soft, dragging slither that echoed along the stone floor. Florence froze. Everyone did. "Probably snakes," someone said too quickly. But Florence knew snakes didn't move like that. This sound was heavy. Rhythmic. Multiple bodies sliding together. The statues began to look less random now. They weren't scattered. They formed a ring. Something had herded them here. A voice spoke from the darkness beyond the headlamp beams. "You came a long way to die." It was female. Calm. Ancient. Each word carried the weight of centuries. Florence's breath caught. "Don't look up," she said sharply. Everyone, eyes down. Now. The team hesitated. That was the mistake. A scream cut through the cave as one of the archaeologists lifted his head instinctively. Florence heard a horrible cracking sound, like ice breaking under pressure. She dared a glance just in time to see his body stiffen, skin paling to gray, muscles locking as stone crawled across him from the eyes outward. He became a statue in seconds. Another person turned to run, and screamed as reflected light bounced off a polished stone surface and into his face. He froze mid-step, forever trying to flee. Panic erupted. Florence dropped to her knees and covered her eyes, heart slamming so hard she thought it might burst. The smell of stone dust filled the air. The slithering grew closer. "I warned them once," the voice said almost sadly. "They never listen." Florence felt breath near her ear, cold, smelling of iron and old death. "You know who I am," the voice whispered. Florence did. Medusa. Not the monster of children's books, but the ancient Gorgon, cursed, immortal, furious. Florence remembered the fragments of myth that never made it into popular retellings. Medusa was not born evil. She was made. And she remembered the rules. Never meet her eyes. Florence crawled blindly, fingers scraping against stone, knees bruising. She heard the others screaming, then stopping abruptly, one by one, each cut short by that awful cracking silence. She reached into her pack, hands shaking violently, and felt cold metal. A bronze mirror fragment, recovered earlier from a nearby ruin. She'd brought it as a curiosity. Now it was salvation. Florence angled the fragment carefully, barely daring to breathe. The reflection showed her hell. Medusa was enormous. Her upper body was human, terrifyingly beautiful, face carved with fury and grief, but below the waist she was a massive coil of serpentine muscle. Snakes writhed from her scalp, hissing in dead languages. Her eyes glowed like molten gold, burning with hatred and loneliness. Stone statues surrounded her like trophies. Medusa tilted her head. "So careful," she murmured. "You learned the old stories." Florence's legs trembled. "I didn't come to hurt you." Medusa laughed, a dry, bitter sound. "They all say that." The Gorgon lunged. Florence threw the mirror fragment and ran. Stone exploded behind her as Medusa's gaze struck the cave wall instead. Florence didn't look back. She ran until her lungs burned, until the darkness thinned and sunlight pierced the cave mouth like a blade. She burst out screaming and collapsed onto the dirt, sobbing, blood streaking her hands from unseen cuts. Behind her, the cave shook. Stone thundered down as the entrance collapsed in on itself, sealing the darkness inside. Florence Delta was the only survivor. Authorities found no evidence of her team. No statues. No cave entrance. Just a woman shaking uncontrollably, whispering warnings no one believed. Florence never returned to archaeology. But sometimes, late at night, she hears the sound of something sliding across stone in her dreams, and wakes with the certainty that somewhere, deep beneath the earth, something ancient is still waiting. And next time, it won't let her look away.